Tonight is the battle of EQ modes, the SeeStar S50 with its wedge versus the Celestron Evolution, also on a wedge and with this really cute tabletop tripod. This is all running through ASIAIR, and this is all running through the SeeStar native app. Last time, the SeeStar nearly matched a beginner rig in Alt-Az mode, and tonight with EQ mode, it gets an upgrade. And we'll see if this big SET can finally pull that far ahead of such a simple little device. The wedge here is what turns a simple Alt-Az mount into an equatorial mount. That means that it's tracking the sky on one axis instead of on two, reducing what's called field rotation and hopefully allowing longer exposures. This is the upgrade both rigs are testing tonight. All right, so here's where portability really gets tested. The SeeStar, definitely still a backpack rig. It's light, it's quick, it's app driven, it's everything you need it to be in something that you can realistically take with you as a carry-on. The cool new part that we're adding today, the wedge, doesn't really take up that much space. In contrast, the Evolution, well, okay, it's more of a rolling suitcase than a backpack rig, but they are both portable in their own way. Let's see how portable feels after midnight when we get to put both of these rigs away. Now, portability matters, in my opinion, because if a setup feels like a chore, you won't use it. A backpack rig gets you potentially out more often shooting, while the heavier setup will give you tons more flexibility. All right. But last time, the SeeStar wasn't even in EQ mode. It just did its thing on Alt-Az. Tonight, with the wedge, it's going to get to play in the big leagues. The Evolution is also running in EQ mode with its wedge, but everything's going to be running through the ASIAIR. And honestly, it's about as quick to set up as the SeeStar as far as like polar alignment and that sort of stuff goes. A couple minutes of plate solving and adjustments and you're done. Different apps, but it's the same idea. Point, solve, tweak, go. Polar alignment matters because the Earth is always rotating under us, and so if your mount doesn't match the rotation of the Earth, you're going to get star trails. And what we're doing right now is basically pointing this axis of each of these scopes straight at essentially the North Star. It's actually a couple degrees off. Aligning to the pole lets both rigs track really smoothly, which hopefully will get us really round stars and allow us to take even longer exposures. I will cover both the SeeStar sort of EQ alignment and the ASIAIR polar alignment in detail in future sort of app breakdown guides. But for tonight, we're just gonna do it really quick, and we'll, follow me for that other video. So we'll move over to the screen recording. On the SeeStar, you simply tap on the SeeStar itself on your screen, advanced features, mount mode, EQ mode. And even on this screen, one of the things that you need to pay attention to is it's already telling you your latitude and what that angle needs to be. So it's telling me that I need to go up just a little. And so you would adjust the knob here, bring it up, do it again. Come on, buddy. Come on. Oh, went away for a second there. There we go, 33, 33. And then we click Get Polar Line Deviation. Now, this part is asking you which part of the sky is basically the most clear where it's set up so that it can try to do its alignment. I'm gonna go with 4, because if I point too far that way, there's trees and stuff in the way. So pick whichever one works for you. And now you can see it's starting to open up. What it's gonna do is it's gonna take a series of images and plate solve them. And with some math, it can figure out how far it's deviated from that North Pole, and then you'll see me make some minor adjustments to the wedge here. It's got sort of left, right, and then up, down, and that's how you get it to be polar aligned. Okay, it's about to start taking its first image. Yeah, sure enough, here the app is telling us what we need to do. I think up down is probably fine. It's 0.5 degrees. Left right, it needs to go essentially left 3.2 degrees. So I'm gonna put this down. And what I do is I just put it on the floor and watch it because it is refreshing its deviation. So you can see it changes sometimes. So let's go Let's see, is it this way? What does that get us? Oh, 4.2, that's the wrong one. I always forget which one means left arrow, which one means right arrow. So that first adjustment's usually wrong. There we go. Now we're getting closer. A little bit. And we're making really small adjustments here. I'm gonna have it run through that one more time. We're now in EQ mode, and you'll see here at the top, we've got 60-second exposures now. I don't think we'll need 60-second exposures tonight. What I'm really looking for is a drop in the reject rate. I like turning on save each frame, and it's in EQ mode, and this thing's ready to rock. Let's go ahead and, you know what? Let's kick it off while we're setting up the evolution. So we're gonna go here. I do like this interface. It's pretty easy. And there's a puppy in front of one of the lights. Let's go to the Dumbbell Nebula. That's what we're going to be shooting tonight. And we're going to hit go gazing. And now it's doing its thing. There's an initialization in progress. These can take minutes sometimes. So I know we say that the SeeStar is sort of a grab and go, really fast, really simple. But you do spend a lot of time staring at screens sort of like this. It's still really easy, and compared to what we're about to go through with this, really simple. So while that's doing its thing, let's open up the ASIAIR app. Actually, let me take a look at the hand controller on the Evo. And we're going to press enter to begin alignment. It would help if I turned it on. There we go. Oh no, there's an app update. There's the other problem with smart telescopes. There's updates. One of the first things I'm going to do in here is get focus. So we'll just let it run a preview. Should be pretty close. Yeah, that's not too bad. This is a manual focus. All right, those stars look all right. We'll do a plate solve. And because we didn't do an alignment, there we go, sync mount. Because we didn't do an alignment within the mount itself, we're just using the ASIAIR to push sort of pointing location to the mount. So it's like, okay, now I sort of know where I'm pointing. And all we do in here is tell it to go to M27, the dumbbell. Boop. And we'll ask it to go there. It's very loud. Like the SeeStar, once it points there, it shoots a picture, and then it does a plate solve, and it tries to determine if it's pointing at the right area. It was not. Just gonna take another crack at it. While this is doing its thing, we're gonna go back to the SeeStar, see how that's working out. Whoa, that's awesome. It already started. So it's stacked 2 and it's ignored 2. Ow, we're losing frames. All right. But that's awesome already. Okay. And we're just gonna let the SeeStar run. We'll come back and check on it later. ASIAIR says it's pointing at the right thing. Let's take a look. It is. Wow, that's also very good. Within ASIAIR, we're going to go to live stack. So it's sort of apples to apples. We did take darks earlier. And we're gonna pick our darks file. Darks are basically, it's something that the SeeStar does automatically. It's what sort of read noise is there on the camera, and then it subtracts that from the final image. So we're gonna let this run for 1 hour with 30-second exposures at bin 1. That works. We're gonna hit start. sit here and wait for the first one to come through and just make sure everything looks good. All right, I think what we're seeing here is what happens when you do your polar alignment first. See that? We need to polar align. It's pretty easy. You go into the polar align and you hit go. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to take 3 images. And use math, probably the same math because they are the same manufacturer, and then give us a series of adjustments to make. All right, let's go. How far off are we? Okay, looks like we need to go up and left a little bit. So this one's got a nice big, altitude adjustment here. So we're gonna adjust that first and see if we can go up 1 degree or so. All right, we're there. So we'll go back to our live stack, make sure our darks are selected, and go. We'll check that first frame, and hopefully we won't see any elongated stars. We shouldn't. I think our polar alignment was about as good as I've gotten it out here before. That looks awesome. So both of these rigs have nearly the same field of view, which is about 1 degree across. N27 fits perfectly within both of these because it's bright and compact, and unlike the last time when we did the Veil Nebula, it does actually fully fit in the frame of both of these. And the target choice matters because your field of view is, think about it like sort of a camera lens. If you're too wide, the subject looks tiny and you don't really get any detail. If it's too narrow, it won't fit and it'll be zoomed in onto one little section of something. M27, like I said, is compact, bright, and ideal for comparing rigs fairly. All right, both rigs are happily imaging M27, and first impressions, that SeeStar EQ mode was quick and fairly painless, just like last time, only now the stars stay around longer and hopefully we lose less subs. The Evo, it's bigger aperture, more control, but also some more complexity, more weight, and more cables. It does have those smaller pixels on the sensor that we're using today, which does make it less forgiving on tracking, but I think we got a really good polar alignment. For a lot of people, this is a typical astrophotography trade-off. Simplicity versus flexibility. The SeeStar just works, but it does have its limit. The Evo gives you more capacity, but more ways that things can go wrong. We're pretty lucky tonight, and honestly with this particular example, I've had really good luck. Both apps have a lot of depth. I'm doing a full series on the control systems later, so subscribe if you want to see that deep dive. For tonight though, it's all about which one delivers. All right, well that's the capture night for our EQ showdown. Last time, the SeeStar nearly matched a full beginner rig without the EQ mode. And tonight, with the EQ mode, it's going to take on the Suitcase SCT. Next step, we're gonna process that data and find out if the SeeStar can punch above its weight. The best rig isn't just the one with the most features, it's the one that you'll actually use consistently that'll give you results that you're proud of. And that's the real question, which one gives you those better results without scaring you away? All right, so here we have on the right the Celestron Evolution, and on the left we've got the SeeStar. So let's zoom in pretty tight on the core here. You can see we've got some of this walking noise, again, that we saw in that last video when we were using the planetary cameras to do deep sky imaging, and this seems to be a pretty common thing. Maybe I'll look into it a little bit more. But you can see that on the Evolution, you can start making out over here on the outside this like really faint blue outer shell, and you can't really make that out on the SeeStar. But let's see what happens if we just do a little bit of post-processing work. To do that, I'm gonna use Siril, which again is a free app that you can download. It's made specifically for processing astrophotography images, and you can put anything in there, even images from a SeeStar. You do have to enable that button if you're using live mode to get all of the frames out, but it's pretty simple. So here's SeeStar. Let's start with the ASIAIR. So we're going to change the home to the ASIAIR folder here, and we're going to go and, yep, that works. We'll open that. And there's scripts that do all of this. I like doing it by hand because it gives me a little bit of extra control. So you come into conversion first and you select, okay, what are all the images that we want to use here? We're going to select all of these lights, which are all the individual frames that were taken. And then we're going to give this sequence a name down here. We'll call this one Evolution ASIAIR. And we will debayer. And what debayering does is it basically converts a black and white image, which is what a FITS file is, to a color image by basically analyzing what the Bayer matrix looks like, and then it applies some math to it. Don't worry about it. We're going to check that box and we're going to hit convert. It's going through and essentially moving all of those pictures and doing the conversion and moving them all to an area that it knows. And let's see, let's wait for that to finish. Okay, once that's done, again, it'll be really hard to see any images, but down here, instead of linear, we're going to select auto stretch. And we're going to uncheck this box that says link the channels, and that'll take some of that green noise out of this initial thing. We'll go into sequence, and this is a sequence we just created with all these images, and we'll click open frame list. What's happening now is it is going to show you a list of every single frame that makes up this sequence. And you can go through and pick one. See, these are the first two where we didn't do a polar alignment yet, so you can see the stars are streaky. We actually definitely don't want those, so you uncheck this SEL select. And we'll pick this one as the first good one and set this as the reference image. Okay, that's good. Next, we'll do registration, and this is where it tries to do all of the star aligning. So it'll look at every single image and try and sort of match up pairs or groups of stars so it knows how to rotate the image. I just pick global star alignment deep sky. I essentially leave all of this at its default and then register selected images only. And it's going to add this prefix R underscore to your current sequence. So you'll know that this sequence is the registered sequence. And you click go register, and you can see on the screen, it just sort of circled where it thinks all of those stars are. And it's going to go through every single image in that stack and try and line up all of those circles so that you end up with every image perfectly stacked on top of the other. Okay, now that it's done that, you can see here it says sequence process partially successful with 4 images that failed. So there were 4 pictures that it couldn't get an alignment with. Honestly, that's okay. So we're just going to look at the plot, and you can see here, this is the WFHM, which is the weighted full half max. I know what the words are, but I'm not 100% sure what they mean. But essentially, it's the size of the stars. And you can see that, we had some pretty good ones down here, and then it jumps up a little bit up into the 11s. If you want to, you can go back into this sequence tab up here and click open frame list and sort them by W or FWHM. And you can see, all right, these are that are 11. Oh, that is kind of a bad image. So maybe I don't want that one. What I've seen, and this was some advice I got from watching like Quiv the Lazy Geeks videos, is he'll sort of pick a line of demarcation and say, well, we're just going to throw away anything that's over, let's say, 7. And so that would be all of these down here. So we'll pick them and then hit deselect. And so now we've sort of culled the amount of images. We're only going to have, I think we'll probably have 100 something images that we can still use. Now comes the fun part, the stacking. So you click on the stacking button up here. Method, normalization, pixel rejection. If you leave your mouse pointer over these, it'll actually give you a really informative info box that tells you everything about what that box does. In my testing, I like average stacking with rejection, Normalization is additive with scaling. Yeah, additive with scaling. And then I use Windsorized Sigma clipping, and the weighting is that FWHM. And so I believe it attaches a weighting so that the sharper images get a little bit, have a little bit more impact on the final image. Once you've done that, you can see here image rejection. We're only going to stack 149 of the 171. We threw away a bunch, and it's going to save it there, and we're going to hit start stacking, and it'll start doing its thing. And now we wait again. Okay, now that that's done, you can see here the semi-final image. Again, this has the auto stretch applied, which makes it sort of look blown out. We're going to turn off the auto stretch, go back to linear, and you can see this is what an image looks like. There, you can see a couple of the really bright things, but for the most part, you can't really see anything at all. We will save this as is. There we go. Just so that we can run it through a couple different processes that I've been testing out using the Cosmic Clarity suite. But we're going to go ahead and just do the exact same process for the images out of the SeeStar. And so I'll get back with you in a sec. Okay, now that we've gone through that process, the same process with the SeeStar, we can see here the output image. Looks pretty clean, and again, this is with it stretched. We'll look at it back in linear mode. There you go. And we're going to save this as well. One more thing that we'll do is we'll do a background extraction and some color correction before we run it through denoise and Cosmic Clarity. I think it's just called Cosmic Clarity. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, here it is with the background extraction and color corrected using the photometric color correction. This is for the SeeStar, and I'm going to save this one more time, and we're going to do that to the ASIAIR image as well real quick. All right, that's what that looks like with the photometric color calibration and the background extraction. We're going to save that. The Cosmic Clarity suite is distributed as essentially a zip file that you download, and then you sort of grab your input and your output images, and I have it in here. You have an input and an output folder. You put your images in the input folder, and you grab your images from the output folder. Let's clear that out real quick. There we go. For the input, let's grab the ASIAIR one. From here, you just double click on these executables and they'll do these things. So there's denoise and Cosmic Clarity. There's dark star, satellite for removing satellite trails, and then super resolution, which is sort of a drizzle. So I think we'll start with super resolution. Go with the evolution on the right and the SeeStar on the left. All right, this is just some quick and dirty stacking, but you can see there's a little bit more noise in the SeeStar image on the left than in the evolution image on the right, but there's a little bit more color detail there. So I think that might be some of the filtering that was done or the filter that was used by the SeeStar. It has a very good built-in filter. All right, let's move on and take those two images from the output, throw them back into the input, and let's run let's run the Cosmic Clarity suite. It should run on both images at the same time this time, as opposed to having to manually select them like we did in the super resolution. So we open the image up, and let's turn off the view mode from auto stretch to linear. And we'll come in here and use this stretches here, histogram transformation. I use this for the first couple of like rough stretches. Just try and get some of this brightness back. And what I'm doing is I'm taking this slider and I'm moving it till the histogram is at about a quarter. That's something I sort of have in my head from, I think I was watching Nico Carver's videos. He's like, oh, drag it over a quarter and then drag it back. And the first couple times you do it, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, or why am I doing this? But you can see that the peak and the trough stay a little bit wider every time you do it. So do that. Okay. Now from here, we'll use what's called a generalized hyperbolic stretch transformation. You can do things like local stretch intensity, so it'll brighten up the bright parts essentially. And we'll just do a little bit of work here. And then the symmetry point brings it all back down to something reasonable. And then you've got like shadow protection, which prevents the darks from getting too dark. And then highlight protection, which prevents the lights from getting blown out. So we're going to use a little bit of that here. And again, just gentle movements. Bring it up. And do some more of the symmetry protection, or symmetry point adjustments. There we go. A little bit of shadow protection. And a lot of highlight protection. Okay, one last thing we'll do to the image is we'll do some saturation adjustments. Just to bring a little bit more of the color out, but you don't want to go too crazy with it because it can also, it's sort of like the stretches, it can blow things out and they won't look right. Apply that. And there you go. All right, we will save that as the sort of same file name, but I'm going to end this in processed. So we know when we look at it that that's the processed one. And then we'll do the same thing to the SeeStar image. All right, here we have it. The SeeStar is over here on the left. You can tell because of its more sort of vertical portrait orientation. And the Evolution is on the right. You can tell because it's got a square orientation. If we zoom in here, yeah, the 8 inches of aperture really make a difference here. And so the Evolution is able to get a lot of that faint detail. But again, the SeeStar is just holding up its own to an amazing level. The SeeStar in EQ mode, the big gain wasn't necessarily star shape, as it never really star trails. That happens very rarely because it'll just drop those frames. The upgrade was efficiency. It rejected a lot fewer frames. It rejected a lot fewer frames, and that means that I had a lot more usable subs when we're doing the stacking, which means more total exposure time and a smoother final image. The Evolution's data on the right shows more resolution in that core area, sort of about here, which is no surprise, like I said, with 8 inches of aperture and those tiny pixels on that sensor. I did get some questions on Instagram while I was sort of posing teaser reels for this. One was around ground clearance for cameras and reducers on the Evolution sitting on the Wedge like that with a tiny tripod. It can get tight. If you're using a reducer or a long imaging train at the back, anytime you're pointing essentially anywhere near the celestial pole, it's essentially even with the sort of base of the Evolution. And there honestly isn't space there. If you're using a planetary camera like I am, which is pretty small and narrow, something like this versus say a cooled astrophotography deep sky cam like this, you can buy yourself a lot of room. But if you have a reducer there and you need to pull it out, like I think it's 135 millimeters past the reducer, it won't work. Again, unless you're looking at stuff that's essentially from here to, well, anywhere south. But if you're looking to go north with it, it will hit that base. Now for this, I used a Hyperstar, so it didn't matter. I could put any sort of imaging train on the end of the Hyperstar as it sits on the front on the corrector side. But just that's something to consider if you're thinking about using the Evolution mount for EAA, which is electronically assisted astrophotography or astronomy. Another question I got was about alignment with that tabletop tripod. I used that really small one, which I think is adorable, and I like it because it's cute. And was sort of the reason for this test was these two tiny cute setups, both on wedges. How do they perform? And I got some questions about how hard it is to do alignment or if there's any balance issues. And honestly, no. At no point did I think it was going to fall over. The alignment for the polar alignment on the Wedge, even on the tripod, all the bolts and nuts are really easy to get to. If anything, I think the SeeStar on that wedge might have been a little bit trickier. But no, if you use the Celestron wedge with the Evolution, I've had no issues with it in the past, and I've had it out under the stars for a couple of nights. I also got a question about, does longer focal length make it less simple? And that's hard to, I don't know, it's sort of a hard one for me because I was using Hyperstar, so the focal length was 360 or 370 millimeters, something like that. And so, no, it was easy. Even using this tiny little sensor, it was pretty straightforward. I do my primary imaging for some of the pictures you'll see on like my Instagram. I do that with an 11-inch Edge HD with no reducer. It's not on Hyperstar. It's just, you know, my whole mono imaging train is bolted to the back. It's tricky, but you can get it to work. I've done some really great images with it. I'll sort of overlay some of those here of what I'm working on right now. And long focal length doesn't necessarily make it any more difficult, but it just means you have to pay attention to a lot more stuff. All right, so with the Q&A session over, what's the verdict? Who wins? The SeeStar's EQ upgrade made it better than ever before. We got more subs for any given amount of time that allowed us to get slightly smoother results. It is still the more portable of the two options, but the Evo clearly delivers much finer details. And again, just like with the last image or the last video that we did, where it was battling against a full astrophotography rig, you can use each of those components in any way that you want, and the SeeStar is sort of all baked in. The fact that the SeeStar gets this close, though, even against an 8-inch SCT, now this was a really bright target, so the extra aperture didn't really play too much into capturing faintness, but it did help in capturing some resolution. I think the SeeStar held its own amazingly well. And I think for most people getting into astrophotography, the processing is probably the thing that you should learn or try to learn first. And the SeeStar, with its ability to get all those frames out, lets you really mess with the processing and get familiarity with tools like Siril or PixInsight if you want to jump into that before you spend a ton of money on equipment. So, you know, get the SeeStar, see if you like the images as they come straight from it, or if you want to get into the processing because you want to try and get bigger, more advanced rigs in the future. It's a good place to start. So that was the Battle of the Wedges. Next, I think we're going to do a deep dive into each control system's app. So the SeeStar, the ASIAIR, and then the Windows ecosystem, so that people can get a sense of the pros and cons for each of those. And I'll do their own guides as their own separate videos. Subscribe if you want to see those deep dives, and of course more real sky battles like this one. I'm Francisco, and for Deep Sky Labs, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.